Okay, everyone, hello once again. We welcome you once again to this seminar. We are about to start now. Well, as usual, we will have a video recording that will be played. And when the recording is going on, feel free to send your questions, and we will answer your questions immediately after the video is finished. So you can use the Q&A button on your screen to forward your questions during the presentation, and even during the Q&A session, you can still send your questions and we will gladly reply to your questions. Okay, so the recording will be played, and yeah, we will take questions immediately after that. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Clement Nzinda, Program Leader for Business Programs here at the School of Doctoral Studies. And I welcome you all to this statistics seminar, this series. Okay, I will be doing the first presentation, which has to do with defining variables and entering data into SPSS. Okay, I hope you find it helpful. Okay, good. I will start right away. Let me share my screen. Okay, good. Now, once you open SPSS, you have two views. Okay, you have the data view and you have the variable view. Okay, data view and the variable view. Now, where you need to start is by defining the variables, which is in the variables view. This is where we define the variables. Okay, I will proceed with defining a few variables. For this presentation, I developed just a draft questionnaire, okay? And I will be taking the information from this questionnaire and entering into SPSS. And as I do so, I will be explaining how to go about it. And I hope you pick up a few things that will be useful to you during data analysis, especially entering the variables in entering your data in SPSS. Okay, so the starting point is the variable view, as I said. Okay, and here, excuse me, you have to start by defining the variables. The first variable which we have here is the variable age. Okay, so I will enter the name of the variable age here. Okay, let me just enter the second, the third, and the fourth variable. Okay, the next variable is gender. After that variable, we have marital status. Okay, marital status. Okay. Now, one thing we need to keep in mind when defining variables, especially variable names in SPSS, is that the variable name should have no space. The names do not take space nor any special character. Okay, so if you have a variable that is made up of two words, you need to use the underscore like I did here when writing the name of the variable. Okay, the fourth variable which we have here is, okay, number of years of existence of your business, so age of business. So let's put age, business. Okay, so that is it for these variables, just the first four. I will leave the fifth variable for later because it's a little different. Entering, defining that particular variable is a little different. Okay, so once we have entered these variables here, if you come to the data view, you see the variables that were entered here now appear as columns. Okay, so for the first column, the ages of all the participants will be entered here, gender and race. Okay, so as you define the variables here, they appear immediately this other way. Okay, so once that is done, we move to the next column in the variable view, which is the type of variable. Yeah, now one thing I usually do is just for the purpose of this presentation that I'm entering the names of multiple variables first before moving to the other columns. But generally, it's good to put the name of one variable and go through all of the columns for that particular variable before moving to the next variable. Okay, so the next column is the variable type, which is here, it's numeric. Generally, you'll be entering numeric data in SPSS because, I mean, it's the numerical data that we do analyze. Okay, so we leave that at numeric. Here we have the width, which is the number of characters the maximum number of characters that a particular entry can take. Okay, so it's 8, meaning I cannot enter a number as far as the data is concerned that has more than 8 characters. Okay, the next one is the decimals. This tells us the number of decimals, maximum number of decimals that each a particular data entry can take, and it's at 2. So if it's at 2, let me just show you. Let's say we enter the age of a participant, we put 5. Let me go maybe 50 years old. You see, it will show 50.00 because we have 2 decimal places configured here. So in order to take that out, we put the decimals to 0 because the data that I'm using does not have any decimals. Okay, so I'll put that at 0 and you see it appears 50 here. Okay, good. So the next column is the label. Now, in the label column, we put just a brief description, a short statement describing what that variable is all about, because variable names are very short. At times, you might need to provide more information on that variable, more description about that variable so that it's clearer. Okay, so like the first variable age, that variable age refers to the age of participants. So I will refer to that variable as, I'll give the label to that variable age of participants. This is gender of participants. Okay, so put the gender of participants. Okay, this is marital status. I think that what is self-explanatory. Marital status of participants. Okay, and here I'll put here age of the business. Okay, good. Now that has been entered. The next column which we have is the column of the values. Okay, now this is very interesting part of entry defining your variables. We have generally 2 groups of variables. Okay, we have what we refer to as scaled or ratio variables. Okay, and we have what we refer to as categorical variables. Okay, what the scale variables are variables that take data, that is the kind of data they take is such that the difference between 2 points or 2 data entries is meaningful. Let me take, for example, age. Age, for example, is a scaled variable or a ratio variable. Now, if one participant, for example, is 50 years old and another participant is 45 years old, okay, we can see the difference in the ages between these 2 participants is 5 years. Okay, so 50 minus 5 gives us a value 5, which is meaningful. It's something that makes sense. Okay, for any to know the variable type, if it's scaled or it's categorical, okay, you just ask yourself the question: if I do the difference between two units within that variable, would it actually make sense? Okay, so for age, for example, that is a scaled variable. Okay, now gender, on the contrary, is not a scaled variable, it's a categorical variable. Okay, or categorical, or let's just call it a grouping variable. Categorical variable is the technical name that is used. Okay, now I cannot say gender female minus the gender male will give me anything meaningful. It will not make sense. Okay, so whenever you have that type of data where the difference between 2 data entries, whenever you have kind of variable where the difference between 2 data entries within that variable does not make any sense, okay, then that is a categorical variable. Another good example of categorical variable is level of education. Okay, now let's say one participant has a bachelor's and another participant has the master's. Even though there is an order between them, you cannot have a master's degree without having a bachelor's, there is some sort of order. Okay, I cannot say that is a scaled variable because I cannot say master's minus bachelor's will give you anything meaningful. No. Meanwhile, there is order, full ranking between the entries that that variable can take. The difference between two data entries does not make much sense. So that's categorical data. Yeah, so I hope that is very clear. Now, generally for all categorical data that you are entering in SPSS, you will have to define, give numerical definition to each possible type of entry that data can take. So we have gender. So here, while in order to enter that, to define a particular variable, you see in my questionnaire, I have gender, I have 3 answer options, male, female, and prefer not to say. Okay, so let me start with prefer not to say. I'll define it as 0. So prefer not to say. So whenever I enter data, I enter 0 for this particular variable, SPSS will understand I'm referring to participants who prefer not to disclose their gender. Okay, the next value, the next one, let me put 1 for male. Okay, so whenever 1 is entered for that particular variable, SPSS will understand that it is referring to male participants. Okay, female. Okay, good. So that particular variable has been defined. You see the different entries have been defined. Now, let's go to marital status. What do we have? We have single, married, divorced, prefer not to say. Okay, let's start with prefer not to say. I always like to give 0 to those who prefer not to say. Okay. Let's go. What's the order there? We have single, married, and divorced. Okay. So the next one, single. Okay, add that. The next one, 2, married, 2, excuse me. Okay, 2 for married. Okay, add that, and 3 for divorced. Okay, good. Divorced. Okay, so I've defined the 3 variables, the 3 possible entries. The 3 categories that that particular variable can take, excuse me, and the age of the business, number of years of existence of the business is a scaled variable, okay, because you can say this business is 5 years old, this other business is 3 years old, and the difference between 3 and 5 will be meaningful. So you can actually say one business is 2 years older than the other. So this is going to be a continuous something. Okay, so then missing values, you can choose to define missing values. Generally, I do not define missing values, but many people who use SPSS prefer to define missing variables, and we can generally use 999 or some figure of that type. Okay, so you can enter like 9991111, and whenever SPSS sees that, it will know that that's a missing variable. So you might also choose to leave it like that. It's very trivial. Okay, except you need to run some type of analysis that really warrants you to define missing variables. Okay, so the next column which we have here is the measurement. Like I explained, we have 3 types of variables: scaled variables, ordinal variables, and categorical variables. Now, categorical variables can be divided into 2 subgroups: ordinal variable and nominal variables. Okay, nominal variables, as the name implies, are just names. And if you see the icon that is beside this in SPSS, these 3 dots, okay, let me see if I can enlarge that. Okay, you see these 3 dots, you see there's really no order. Okay, so it's just names. Like, for example, gender. Gender is an ordinal variable. It's just no names. There is no order as far as that particular variable is concerned. You cannot say, okay, men are higher than women, women are higher than men. Okay, so there is no specific order there. When you have that type of variable, you refer to it as a nominal variable. Now, age is scaled variable, like I've explained. Marital status also is an ordinal nominal variable, because you cannot say married person is superior, or marriage is superior to single, or superior to divorce. Okay, there is no established order. Now, like I said, an example, a variable like educational level is going to be an ordinal variable. An ordinal variable, because you need to have, for example, a master's is higher than a bachelor's. Okay, A doctorate is higher than a master's, and which is higher than a bachelor. So there is some order, okay? Even though the difference between the different, even though the difference between the different data entries there, it does not make any sense, but there is order that is established, okay? So we also have nominal data for that. And we need to know when we have scale data, for example, the type of analysis that we run, okay, also should match the variable type that we are making use of. For example, I cannot run, say I'm running a correlational analysis with categorical variables. If I have categorical variables and I want to measure correlation or association, I would rather use the chi-square test, for example, instead of using the correlation analysis, because it's not going to give me meaningful, the results are going to be erroneous, not meaningful. Okay, if I want to also, for example, run a simple regression analysis, I might opt for simple linear regression analysis for scaled variables, but for categorical variables, it will be better to run logistic linear regression or logistic regression analysis, excuse me, and that will make more sense because of the variable type that I am using. Okay, so now once we have entered these variables, we have defined these variables, excuse me, we come here. When you come to the data view, you can choose two options. You can, using this button here, right here, you can choose either to see the different categories for the categorical variables, or you click on it again just to see the numbers. Okay, so let's explain what I say. I actually reply to two of these two. I actually made two replies to this particular questionnaire that I'm using. Okay, so let's just enter entry. This is respondent one. Okay, the age of respondent one, 35. Okay, let me use this view. Okay, the gender of respondent one is male. Okay, you see how easy it is. Marital status is single. Okay, and number of years of existence of the business, 5. Good. Okay, that's fine. Let's go to respondent 2. Let's see what respondent 2 says. Okay, respondent 2, we have age 26. Okay, marital status, excuse me, gender, female. Marital status, prefer not to say. Okay, prefer not to say. And then number of years of existence of their business, 3. Good. Okay, so you see the categorical variables are appearing by names, but if I click here, they'll all appear numerically. Okay, so depending on your preference, you can choose whatever appearance matters most, is most informative to you and easier to use. Okay, now, like I said, for the next question, we have what we refer to as a multiple response variable. Okay, a multiple response variable is a variable that can take more than one possible answers. Okay, now for this particular questionnaire, I was developing it to evaluate the access to capital, small businesses' access to capital. Okay, and question 5 was what are the sources of capital for the business? How does the owner of the business get the capital that he needs in order to run the business? And we have different options there. We have personal savings, aid from family and friends, reinvestment of profits, banks, microfinance, and banks, and also prefer not to say. Okay, now since this particular variable can take multiple answers, therefore one participant can choose more than one option, we need to define each answer option as a variable. And when we define each answer option as a variable, we can then come and create, at the end, create a composite variable that groups all of those variables together. Okay, good. So let me proceed. Let's start with personal savings. Okay, so let's start here. Personal, let's go savings. Let me just put the savings. In order to make it more clearer, let me put SC for source of capital. I put savings. Okay, it's numerical data. Okay, reduce that. So source of capital, source of capital, put savings. Okay, good. Now, when you are entering defining multiple response entries, okay, you generally use 0 for no. For no, that's if that particular source of capital is not being used, that's no. And you put 1 for yes to indicate that that particular participant is making use of that type of that source in order to get capital for his business. So 1 is if that box is checked, and 2 or 0 if the box is not checked. Okay. So missing variables known. We can leave that as categorical. Okay. So let me just put the nominal there. And put nominal or ordinal. It does not make much difference. Okay, so let's go to the next variable, source of capital. Okay, aid from family and friends. So let me just put here aid. Okay, so aid from family and friends. Source of capital. Aid from family and friends. So let me define that 0 for no. 1 for yes. Okay, so you see the number of decimals should be put down to 0. And let me just put that as nominal, ordinal. Okay, let's go. The next one is aid from family and friends. The next one is profits reinvestment. Simple source of capital, profits. That's numerical. Okay, you see, there was a space. Okay, so source of capital underscore profits. It's numerical. Okay, 0 source of capital. Let me just copy that. Is the source of capital. Profits. Profits. Okay. Define the variables as I say. 0 no. And 1 for yes. Okay. Now let me just end there. I think that is it. But I mean, the same thing, the same process can be, the same should be repeated for all the different possible categories that variable can take for all the different entry options that participants have. So we have these 3 sources of capital. Okay, so normally I would have gone right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done that for 4. Okay, just clarity. When we are defining this type of variable, prefer not to say should not be used. Okay, this should not be used. Okay, or if there was the option others, generally we advise you not to use that. Okay, so we'll do that for personal savings, aid from family and friends, reinvestment of profit, microfinance, and banks. Okay, so once that is done, what I can do, for example, in order to bring those variables together and form a composite variable, I come on analyze, come down to multiple response variable, okay, and then define the multiple response variable. You can see all of my variables are here, okay, so I can pick source of capital, all the variable source of capital, and move them this way, and then I'll put the count 1, so it's going to count 1 for every time that a particular it is indicated in SPSS that a participant check that box. So that composite variable will be source of capital. Okay, so that's the name for that label. That's the name for that variable. We can give it a label to explain it. Sources of capital for the business. Okay, good. Now we add that this way. You see, this is the composite variable that is there. Okay, and englobes those three variables. Okay, so if we had defined all of the 5 variables, we will enter them there. So you can come again now to that multiple response variables, and once that is done, you can like check the frequencies, okay, which will give you just a brief description of, will give you a description of that variable, how many entries have been entered for which. Okay. Oh, sorry, I've not yet entered the data. Okay, if I had entered the data, then I'll be able to, for these particular variables, let me just do that real quick. Okay, so that we can be able to get just a quick rough statistics of what participants have said. So participant 2, he chose family and reinvestment of profits. So let's come here, profit 1, 8 from family and friends, 1, okay. And for this one, participants not choosing, so put 0 for that, okay. That's for respondent 2. Respondent 1 chose, just a moment, respondent 1 chose 8 from family and friends reinvestment. Oh, we did not define that for microfinance. So let's go there, 1 and 1. Okay, good. So, and 0 here. Okay. So we can do, wait, if we run a quick analysis now, frequencies. Okay, if I had finished entering all of the variables and enter all of the data, then I could do the analysis here. It could give you how many percentage, the percentage of participants that choose this particular type of capital, source of capital, 8 from friends and family, and source of capital profits. You also got their capital, those who are reinvesting their profits. So you can actually get the descriptive statistics for that particular variable going ahead that way. Okay, so that is it for multiple entry variables. Okay, the last type of variables that I would like to show us, I'll do just one. Okay, is these Likert scale variables. Okay, Likert scale variables. Likert scale is used to convert participants' opinion into a scale something. Okay, so when you have a Likert scale variable, for example, these 5 questions are 5 items that are used to evaluate the access of the business to capital. Okay, as the business access to capital, I'm using 5 items to evaluate how well the business has access to capital. Okay, so what I would generally do in this particular case, or what should be done in this particular case, is that each item should be defined as a variable in SPSS. Okay, once you've defined each item as a variable in SPSS, you are going to enter the values. And during analysis, what we generally do, for example, we can use factor analysis, which is a variable reduction technique, in order to reduce those variables into one composite, join all of those variables together to get the overall access to capital for each participant. Therefore, those items will be brought together. Some analysts and some researchers just prefer to average them out. They can add the 5 and get the average, or they can just sum them up and keep the sum. Okay, but it's always advisable to use factor analysis. You bring all 5 together so that you can come up with one variable that captures the best variability within that particular variable. So let's just do 1 or maybe 2, okay, so that we see how it is done. Okay, so let's say I have the variable access to capital. So let me put here access capital 1. Okay, that's for item 1 on this particular Likert scale variable. I reduce that to 0. I can put a label there, access to capital 1. Okay, or maybe instead of putting 1, I'm going to put the initial capital, access to capital, initial capital. Okay, and then here I'll define the different entries. Okay, so you see on my scale I put 0 for strongly disagree, add it, put 1 for disagree. Okay, put 2 for neutral, 3 for agree, And 4 for strongly agree. Strongly agree. Okay, so once that is done, okay, generally I will come here and put this as a scale variable because the options, the opinions of the participants have actually been scaled or have been converted into a scale by using this likelihood system. Okay, now I would like to define variable just item 3 for that particular variable so that I explain something to us. Okay, access to capital 3. Access to capital 3. Okay, so let me put here access to capital. Let me put underscore was okay, business opportunities. Okay, just opportunities. I'll explain to us later. Okay, we will do the same. We define the variables. I've never tried this. Let me see if I can copy and paste and see if it works. Okay, let's see. Good, it works. Okay, so you can actually just copy and paste, and it's going to define that variable in the same way, since it's the same scale that is being used for that variable. Okay, so that's it. Let's put it as a scale also. Okay, good. Now, when we are actually entering the values for this particular variables, now you see 1 is for strongly agree, 2 is for neutral, and the rest. So this particular participant, respondent 1, he chose 2 for statement for that item 1, he chose 2. Okay, and for item 3, this participant chose 1. I would not enter 1 for item 3. Why? Because item 3 is actually that question is asked in a negative or an inverted way. Okay, look, question item 1 says I have enough initial capital for my business. Question 2 says I have enough, I have capital to carry out the day-to-day operations of my business. So any participant who has access to capital would have high answers for that particular, for those particular items, would have high answers if they have access to capital. But then for item 3, it says my business is missing out on opportunities, on available opportunities because of lack of capital. Now, any business that has access to capital, the participants will have low answers for that particular variable, okay? And this is done so that when you as a researcher recover your questionnaires from respondents, okay, you can be able to see, evaluate, do some consistency check. This will help for consistency checks. Okay, and so you should be able to see if the participants was actually paying attention to the questions and responding properly. Okay, because of this negated question or this, I call it an inverted question, it would make you to know, it will help you to know, okay, if this guy was really answering and he exactly was understanding what he was doing, or if the participant was just taking anything. Okay, so that will give some amount of information on how well the participant was responding to the questionnaire. So now if I want to enter this particular question in SPSS, I'm not going to put 1 for this participant. In order to ensure consistency as I'm entering in participants, I'll take the maximum value minus this value here that the participant took. So I'll take 4 minus 1 here, which will give me 3. So for this particular participant, for question 3, for item 3, I'll rather enter 3 instead of 1. Okay, and so that is how you go about doing it. Okay, thank you very much. That is all for now. Okay, on data entry in SPSS, we are going to take questions. Okay, we are going to take questions, and I would be very glad. I'll be very happy to respond to your questions. And as I answer the questions, I will definitely provide more insight and more explanation into some of the things that we have been shown in this particular presentation. Okay, and also maybe provide other information that might have escaped my attention. Okay, thank you very much for participating, and I wish you all the best, and we are ready to take the questions. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We can now take questions. Okay, if there is anything that was said during the presentation which is not quite captured, and which you would like to have some more clarification about, you can use the Q&A section to send us your questions. Okay, I also have my SPSS open. Okay, so I will obviously provide you with some more explanation on whatever you might have as question. Okay, we have a few questions here. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm going to start taking the questions. We have a question from one of our participants, and it reads, how do you clean data at the initial stage? I don't exactly catch what the question is all about. Well, in quantitative data analysis, you might want to do some consistency checks. Okay, and you can maybe do that by reading through the questionnaires, okay, and trying to clear out some questionnaires that have like considerable inconsistencies. Okay, well, but generally once you have your questionnaires and they're well answered, you enter them into SPSS, and then you carry on with your data analysis. Okay, the next question reads, will the recording be made available? Of course, the recording will be made available to you, and not only for this presentation, we have other presentations in this series. Okay, and all of the videos will be made available to you. The content will be available in the Student Help Center. Okay, I'm sure most of you already know how to access the Help Center. You should be able to view recordings of these videos, and you should be able to carry out your own analysis on SPSS. Yeah, we've noticed many students have difficulties analyzing their quantitative data. Okay, so we would like you to do that yourself. Okay, so we have a series of presentations during this UDCAP statistics seminar. Okay, and which will be accessible to you. We might even integrate them into some modules. Okay, but I mean, we will decide about that later. But it's very possible that we integrate them in some modules also, so that students can be able to access this information during in the course of the modules. Okay, I hope my answer to that question is satisfactory. Okay, next question. This is one of the simplest lectures I have ever attended on SPSS. Thank you for simplifying. Okay, thank you very much for that remark. And I think the other presentations also will be very simple. Okay, we will try to make it as simple and as digestible as possible. SPSS is very easy once you know what you want to do. Once you know what you want to do, it becomes as easy as any other tool you use in your daily life, like a pen you use to write, okay, or like maybe a spoon you use to eat your food. Yeah, so we will always try to keep it simple and digestible, and the whole idea is students should be able to make use of SPSS. Okay. Okay. Yes, we have another, I think it's a question. Thanks, Doc. But if I get stuck while trying to capture, can I contact you? Of course, you can always contact us through the doctoral studies email. Okay, and we will try to make time to provide you with some advice and some support. But I mean, we really cannot substitute you when it comes to your data analysis. Okay, we can only provide guidance and help you to maybe provide some critical information that might help you to overcome a particular obstacle or barrier you are facing with your data analysis. But no, we will not do the analysis for you. We can just accompany and help you just by providing information. We are very ready to provide you with assistance. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Another question. Okay. Hello, thanks for the presentation. Est-il possible de... Okay. Thanks for the presentation. Okay, and then in French. Est-il possible de prévoir une traduction en français la prochaine fois? Merci. Okay, this participant is requesting for translation for the next time. I think we should be considering making a series. I was supposed to answer in French. OK, merci beaucoup pour la question. Oui, je pense que c'est possible. Peut-être après avoir fini avec la version en anglais, nous allons penser faire quelque chose comme ça en français. Ce qui est bien avec SPSS, c'est qu'on peut changer la langue. OK, donc on peut changer la langue et on peut effectuer toutes ces analyses et toutes les analyses en SPSS en français également. OK, donc on va essayer de voir si on peut faire une série comme ça après en français. OK, mais toujours est-il, j'encourage les doctorants francophones et je le dis souvent, c'est très important de commencer à apprendre l'anglais parce que la plupart des sources, l'académie est plus développée en anglais qu'en français. La plupart des sources existent en anglais. OK, et vous allez trouver beaucoup d'outils et beaucoup d'informations en anglais plutôt. Donc, alors que nous nous efforçons, OK, de mettre autant de choses que possible en français, on ne peut vraiment pas éliminer ces difficultés de langue en ce qui concerne l'académie, surtout au niveau doctoral. Donc, j'encourage tous nos participants, tous nos amis francophones, donc d'expression française, de commencer à apprendre l'anglais si vous n'avez pas déjà une bonne maîtrise, certaine maîtrise de la langue anglaise. Il faut commencer à apprendre parce que ça va vous aider non pas seulement pour vos études et même au-delà. La plupart des articles, vous allez voir, lorsque vous êtes dans la recherche, la plupart des bons articles existent en anglais et non en français. OK, merci beaucoup. J'espère que ma réponse à la question est suffisante, je vous l'ai dit. Merci. OK, sorry for that. This another question. I like the reverse question approach to valid questions. Apart from that, how else can we validate? How else can we validate of participants where paying attention or not? If you notice the participant was not paying attention and there is lack of consistency in response, how do you correct that? Now, if you really see that there is considerable inconsistency in the way the participant has answered that question, then I would generally advise that you don't make use of that particular questionnaire. Okay, you can keep the questionnaire out and continue with the consistent ones. That's very, very important. And we always put these reverse questions. I always advise students to include these reverse questions. It's really because some participants just take the questionnaire and just tick without doing. So if you go through a questionnaire and you see there are lots of inconsistencies in the questionnaire, okay, you can just do that, check that, and you see if it's very, very inconsistent, you can eliminate the questionnaire. Okay, you can use like one or two. Okay, some of those reverse inverted questions, you just put them that way so that you see if participants really understand the questions and are giving you answers that are trustworthy. Okay, but when you see those inconsistencies being very pronounced, I would generally suggest you eliminate those questionnaires because participants do not take time to read before answering them and then focus on those that are consistent. Okay, you can also just decide to do your, after you run the analysis, when you do your converge alpha, yes, and that's why I generally advise students also to do converge alpha, even when all of the data has been put. Like if you use, for example, 5 items in your Likert scale to evaluate one variable, when you do the converge alpha value for that variable and you see that there is internal inconsistency, okay, or that your converge alpha value is less than 0.08, that is meaning there is less than 80% consistency in the response for that particular question, okay, then you need to go through the questionnaire and find those that really have inconsistencies in their response, and you might want to eliminate those, and then focus on those that are really consistent, and maybe yeah, use them for your research, because all of the answers for when you use 5 items to evaluate a particular variable, I mean, those items should all be moving towards a particular direction. If they are moving in opposite directions, or if I say, excuse me, if participants are, if those 5 items are not all consistent, I mean, if for the most part they are not consistent, then we have another question. Also, at the end, I did not catch what you said on how to enter Likert scale data. Please show us that part again. Okay, the video will be available for you to watch online. Okay, so you can watch the video online and you'll be able to see how to enter to enter the Likert scale. But what I said is, for the Likert scale questions, each item in your scale, if you are using like 5 questions to evaluate, or 5 items to evaluate one variable, each of those items should constitute a variable in SPSS, should be defined as a variable in SPSS. You enter the data for that particular variable for each of the items of that variable, and then at the end, some researchers prefer to average them out. Okay, so you can maybe, after enter all the 5 items, you can use the average for the rest of your analysis, but it's always advisable to use statistical data reduction technique, the factor analysis, explanatory factor analysis, okay? Which will bring those variables together. You can create one variable out of the 5 variables then, which would gather all of the variations within those 5 items and constitute a variable, one variable, which has been measured using 5 items, so that you can then use them for the rest of your analysis. Okay, next, how do we access SPSS, or students have to look for themselves? Now, I think there's a free version of SPSS. There is free version of SPSS, which is available. Students can have that for themselves, but the functionalities are limited. Okay, if you have the free version, you cannot run the partial, I think it's the partial least square test. Yes, you cannot run the partial least square test with the free version, so you need to get the paid version. Okay, I would advise you to go for the paid version. Okay, so but SPSS is available. There are trial versions, there are free versions that are available. You can download and use, but I would advise you to pay by. Okay. Okay, we have a question in French. Bonjour, Dr. Clément, c'est Gildas. Okay, merci pour cette information. Just thanking the presenter for the information. Okay, still thanking us for the information. Okay, should we purchase the latest version of SPSS? Will there be student concession if we code Unicap? Well, I don't know if that's possible, but if it is possible, of course, it will be an advantage to you. Okay, but what I would like to say is that most of the tests that you have to run, like regression and ANOVA analysis, this simple test you can do with the free version, okay, is when you get to like some very real, I mean, some very, very advanced tests that will need you to have some additional, how do you call them, plugins or add-ons, where you need to download extra packages, okay, to complete for your SPSS. That's when you would not be able to access them, because you're making use of the free version. But you can pay, you can of course buy the paid version. I don't know if using the student label would provide you with reduction, but if that's possible, then it will be great. Okay, next one. Now the recordings will be available in the Student Health Center, so you can always you can always access them there. Okay, and yeah. Next one. Okay. Thank you, sir, for the brilliant presentation. It was well simplified. I don't have a question for the moment. Hopefully, after some practical lessons, I might have some questions. Thank you, sir. Yeah, and once again, if you have a few questions, if you are hooked somewhere, you can always send us a quick email, and I'll try to make time to provide you with some guidance on how to overcome whatever challenge you might be facing using SPSS. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thanks for responding to my previous questions. What are the criteria of using a certain number of Likert scale? Okay, what's the advantage of using 5 scale, 3 or 10? Well, generally, if you're using an already validated instrument, okay, the items will already be there. But generally, people use 5 items to evaluate one variable. Okay, there are cases where you might also want to use more, but we'll generally advise you to use an unpaired number, okay, like 5, 3, 5, 7, okay, an uneven number. Yes. Well, there is really no how do I call it, defined criteria on when to use which, but on an average, I mean, generally people will make use of 5 items. That's what we generally see, 5 items to evaluate a particular variable. But what you really should avoid doing is trying to use one Likert question to evaluate one variable. Okay, you should use more than one question to evaluate a particular variable. Okay, so yeah, that's it. How do we avoid missing values at this stage? Well, you just have to make sure all of the values are entered. Okay, but when participants don't enter values for for a particular variable, you can maybe, after defining your code for the missing variable, like 999, which we use, you can just enter 999 wherever participants do not enter values for a particular variable. Now, when you be running the analysis, when you get like the descriptive statistics, SPSS would then be able to tell you the number of missing variables that you've had for a particular variable, because the code must have been entered. But then if you don't enter any code for missing variables, if you don't define any value for missing variables and you just leave the space empty, SPSS will not be able to count the number of missing variables that you have. I mean, the number of missing entries that you have for a particular variable. Okay, so well, just that code for the missing variable is just to provide SPSS with information on how to identify that, okay, this participant did not answer this question. Okay, and then if you are doing like the descriptive analysis of that particular question, every time SPSS sees that particular code that you have entered, it will count it as a missing variable, and in your descriptive and statistics, it's going to show you that as missing variables. Okay. Okay, we have another question here. Hello, will you avail this data for practice? I guess the student was trying to ask if we would make the data, if we make it available to students. Of course, it will be available in the Student Health Center along with the other presentations. Okay. Well, what's happening? Okay. Okay, we have another question here. I attempted to run regression correlation analysis and variance analysis between 2 airline models over 5 years. Each airline model had approximately 30 sample size. Can I make each of the variables a data set and each of the airlines a variable? Well, I have difficulties capturing exactly how the data was. If I have the questionnaire, then I'll be able to give you a much more exact answer on the best way to define the variables. But I think the information provided during this presentation just gives an overview of the different types of variables and how you should enter them in SPSS. For this particular situation, if I have the questionnaire, then I'll be able to give you maybe information that is more specific about this, but I mean, you should follow the same principles which we have shared. Okay. So, like, I don't know if you have multiple entry variables, if you have like variables, if you have scale nominal variables and the rest, we need to check out all of those. Okay. Okay. Yeah. The next. Okay, interesting SPSS presentation and can manage variables. My question, the first importance is to make interpretation, the parameters from the beginning, starting to refer to the questionnaire interviews of focus group. Could you please give the suggestion? How can categories of variables, how many variables can break down into what I would like to say is this. I'm not sure I got the question quite well, but at the point when you are developing a questionnaire, you should have a very clear picture of the type of analysis which you intend to run. Okay. We see this very often. We see students developing questionnaire, and you can really read from the questionnaire that this student does not really have a clear picture of the type of analysis that he or she wants to run. But just one example from what I said, if you have categorical variables, you have to run a different type of analysis. The variable type will determine the type of analysis that you are going to run. And that's not only the determining factor, there are other determining factors on which type of analysis you are going to run. And you will get more information on this from the other presentations that will be done. You will have a presentation on regression analysis, and it will be very clear what type of variables, how the data should be collected for a regression analysis. If you are doing an ANOVA analysis, there is a particular way in which the data has to be collected and set up for you to be able to run an ANOVA analysis. But for the moment, just depending on the variable types, because that's what we spoke about during the presentation. If you have a scaled variable, okay, you can, for example, run a regression analysis. But if you want to measure association, for example, now, if you still want to measure association, but you don't have scaled variables, you have categorical variables, you should not run a correlation analysis. It's going to give you faulty results. You should instead run a chi-square test associated with the Cramer's V to measure association. That's what you use to measure association when you have categorical variables in play. And yeah, for regression analysis, we have the logistic regression analysis, which is for categorical variables. Okay, so you should not be running maybe linear regression, multiple simple linear regression, multiple linear regression. That you should do if you have scaled variables. Once you have categorical variables and you want to run those type of analysis, it will work. Now you can run those analysis when you have your Likert scale variable, when you've already compressed them, brought them together and form one variable, then you can run your Likert, you can run your regression analysis, you can also run your regression analysis. I mean, multiple linear regression analysis when you have your scaled variable, okay? But once the variables are not scaled, you should also, you should consider that. Now, one thing also that I maybe escaped my mind during the presentation, when you have a binary entry variable, okay, a binary variable, a variable that can take like just 1 and 0, for example, a successful business and a failed business, okay? Success, like a variable like success, business, success, in which a business can either succeed or fail, okay? When you have that type of situation, okay, you might want to make use of maybe the binary regression analysis, okay? So that you would take into consideration the fact that you have one variable that can take only 2 possible entries, 1 and 0, okay? So the variable, the type of analysis that you run depends on the variable type as well as other factors which will be explained to you after. Like, for example, if you have 2 groups and you want to compare them, like if I have businesses in maybe, let's just say South Africa, and I want to compare if the average success rate of businesses in South Africa is maybe statistically different from that maybe in Zimbabwe, and I have 2 groups or maybe even more groups. So I have data that I can put in groups
Okay, there is a way that like in such a case, I'll run the ANOVA analysis because I want to measure the means of different groups to see if there is a statistically significant difference between them. Okay, so depending on the way the data is, you would pick the test that is more suitable for it, and the way hypotheses are formulated as well. Okay, so okay. Simple explanation. SPSS, thank you very much. Okay, so okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you all for the positive comments. I'm really happy to know that we find this presentation helpful. Okay, it says, thanks, Dr. Clement. Please explain what you said regarding different types of analysis to use, whether scalable or non-scalable variables. Okay, I have already said this so many times, but the type of variables, we have two main types of variables. Scaled variables, also referred to as ratio variables, okay? And we have categorical variables. Now, categorical variables can be divided into two groups, but generally you will treat categorical variables the same way, okay? In two groups, you have nominal variables. Nominal variables are just names, okay? They are just names like male, female, okay, boy, girl, okay? Now, those are categorical variables. Those are nominal variables. They are being nominal. What really defines them as nominal is the fact that there is no meaningful order between them, okay? You cannot say boys are higher than girls, girls are higher than boys, or the rest. You cannot, there is no established order, okay, between them. And the second group of categorical variables which we have is the ordinal variables. As the name implies, there is some level of order between them, like level of education, okay? It's a very good ordinal variable, okay? Even though the difference between the different levels of education is not meaningful, okay? I cannot say the doctorate degree minus a master's degree will give me anything meaningful. It will not make sense, okay? But then there is some meaningful ranking between them. If you get a master's degree, you get a doctorate degree. If you have a doctorate degree in, there is a well-established order, is higher than a master's degree. So whenever you have a variable where the difference, where if you take one that is higher minus one that is lower and it does not make any sense, but yet there is still a meaningful order, okay? Then you have an ordinal variable. Okay, we can also use maybe a variable like your position in an organization. General manager is higher than the manager, okay? But you cannot say general manager plus manager will give you anything meaningful. It will not make sense, okay? Because even though there is a meaning, there is a well-ordered ranking, president, prime minister, minister, okay? The ranking is well established, but then the difference between one and the other does not make any sense. But for a scale variable, the best way, easiest way to identify a scale variable is that if you can do one minus the other and it makes sense, then you have a scale variable. Like I am 2 meters tall. No, I'm not up to 2 meters. I wish I were. Okay. And then there is another person who is like maybe 1.5 meters tall, very short person. Okay. And we do the difference. I can say, okay, I'm 50 centimeters taller than this person. And it will make sense. Okay. But I am maybe I'm 0.5 meters taller than this person. And it's going to make sense. Height, age, salary, those are things that are generally on a continuous scale, and the difference between them actually makes sense. Okay. Can I have more than one data set? Yeah, of course, you have data sets, you have more than multiple data sets. Maybe before we go, I don't know if you have much time yet. I think we should still have some time. Okay, I'll just show us a very quick something on SPSS where we can be able to make use of we can be able to see different data sets that are already in SPSS and which we can use to let me just show this very fast. It's something that maybe escaped my mind during the presentation. Okay, let me share this with us very fast. Okay. Okay, now this is SPSS. This is my SPSS. Now we have some sample data in SPSS. This might be helpful to you during the other presentations that will be done. The data is already in SPSS. You can access that data and use it maybe for your own personal practice or training. Okay. So when you log into SPSS, like I have here, okay, you come to File. Okay, you click on File, you go to Open, and then you click Data. Okay. Now, when this window comes up in SPSS, you want to go and look for the disk C of your computer. Okay, where is mine? Okay, this is the disk C of my computer. Okay, open it. Then you should look for the program files. Okay, program files. Some people, the program files will be in program file. You have this *86 here. Mine is here. Program files, and once you get there, you look for IBM. Okay, look for IBM. IBM is the developer of SPSS. Okay, so once you open IBM, excuse me, sorry, let me try to open it. Okay, once you open IBM, you see SPSS. Okay, you click on SPSS, click on statistics. Okay, I'm using SPSS version 2.6, but if you are using another version, the version number will appear there. You click on that. Okay, now once you click on that, you look for samples. Okay, click on samples. Okay, now once you have samples, you can have them in English, French, Spanish, different languages. So I have my sample here. Now these are different sample data. Okay, this one, for example, is the bank loan. Bank loan sample. You have a whole list of sample data that is stored here in SPSS that you can use for your own practice. So if I click on that, for example, and I open, okay, you will see SPSS will reload. Okay, and then you see I have these data sets that have already been developed and kept in SPSS for practice purposes. Okay, so I have this on bank loans. It's already there. So you might want to like get these data sets that are already in SPSS and then use them for practice during the other presentations that will come up. Whenever a presentation is done and you want to do some practice, you can come and check. So you see the different variables that are already entered here. Okay, you see how they're already configured, and the rest you see, for example, categorical variable. You see education, which is a categorical variable. You see how it is defined here. Okay, just like we did. Okay, and the different measures are entered there and everything. Okay, so I just thought of sharing that with you also. Okay, you might find that helpful during a presentation, during the subsequent presentation. So that was for that question. Can I have more than one data set? Of course, once you can collect your data, SPSS, once you finish using it for doing the analysis, you save it in your computer, okay, in a very safe space, and then you use at a later point. Okay. Okay. I am curious to use SPSS. Which ones the SPSS programs version update can we get or download from Unicap University? If it's a free program, can we download? Yes, there is a free version of SPSS. I really did not think of that, but I can try to see if I can get through the free version website. But it's available online. You can do a quick Google search and try to download the free version and use. Okay. Generally, from even SPSS 2.0, 2.1, going up, and version 20, 21, 22, going up, and the rest, which are old versions, there will be those, even those are sufficient to run the kind of analysis that you generally need. Yeah, like I said, if you have the free version, you might have some problems when you want to run, especially the partially square test. The partially square test, you need to download other add-ons in order to run the partially square test. But SPSS Amos, the Amos, which is also an addition to SPSS, is that one is not free. You have to buy it. Okay. Now, Amos is very important if you want to run, if you want to do SEM. Okay, structural equation modeling, you are going to use MOS. And if you want to also do confirmatory factor analysis, okay, if you need confirmatory, if your analysis needs you to, if you need to do confirmatory analysis, confirmatory factor analysis, excuse me, then you are going to use MOS because you cannot do that on normal SPSS. Okay, so that is it. I hope my answer to those different questions are satisfactory. Okay. Thanks, Dr. Clement, for your expertise, tutoring, and patience to answer our questions. You have been very helpful. Thank you very much for the positive feedback. Thank you very much for everything. Of course, we are very much available to provide you with help. You can always send us a quick email if you need assistance. Just keep in mind that we have other presentations on data analysis that will be coming up. The recordings will be available in the Student Help Center, and maybe we might integrate them in certain modules so that we can have access to some of these tutorials. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all about the questions that we had. Okay, and I'm really glad you found this presentation helpful. Okay, we will continue to provide the other presentations. Okay, thank you very much. We have our PVC who is here with us. I don't know if Dr. Elena is available to say what, maybe before we put an end to this first presentation today. Dr. Elena? Okay, yeah, I think she's not available. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking part in this presentation. We wish you the best, and we will definitely be available to answer more questions if you have any. Okay, thank you very much, and bye-bye.